Hello, my name is Lizzie Kennedy, and I've been an undergraduate tutor at the SVSU Writing Center for 3 years, and I've served as the student coordinator for the Community Writing Center for 2 years. Welcome to another SVSU Writing Center video on tutoring writing. In this video, I'm going to be talking about issues of prioritizing. Writers may come into your center and not be sure what they want help with. Maybe they don't even know. Maybe they were just thinking about past grades, so they just say what teachers have told them in the past, and that might not even apply to this writing task. Maybe they just say grammar. This could mean anything from commas to spelling to run-ons to, well, you can fill in those blanks. Maybe they have a whole laundry list of things they want feedback on, or maybe they just want a passing grade. At our center, we approach this by recognizing that all students come in with different backgrounds, abilities, and concerns about an assignment and writing in general. As you know from our videos on the 12-step process, we try to discuss their concerns by placing them into two categories: higher order concerns and lower order concerns. Higher order concerns typically include these four things. Firstly, understanding or fulfilling the assignment. Does the paper even meet the assignment guidelines? Organization. Is there a clear thesis and topic sentences? Are ideas logically presented? Is there a strong intro and conclusion? Are there transitions between ideas? Developing or focusing ideas. Is the paper fully developed, or is it missing key sections? Do the ideas in each paragraph relate to one another? Is there good support or evidence for the claims that the writer is making? Clarity or coherence of ideas. Are the topic sentences clearly related to the ideas in the paragraph? Are the ideas easily understood? And does the paper ramble or go off on tangents? In a nutshell, if a session is focusing on higher order concerns, that means there are more serious problems that may prevent a reader from agreeing with the writer. The reader might need more convincing or might not be able to follow the writer's point. Things may get off track. Info may be missing. There may be logic errors, and the paper is not doing what it's supposed to do. Lower order concerns, on the other hand, focus on these items. Academic voice. Is the language used here appropriate for the intended audience? Grammar. Documentation or format, such as MLA or APA or maybe even CMS. ESL concerns, if the student is a non-native speaker of English. Lower order concerns can definitely have an impact on a writer's grade if it's a school assignment, but they should always be addressed after higher order concerns. Some writers will select a bunch of items from our session record forms list of higher order and lower order concerns. When that happens, we as tutors just ask the writers what is the most important to them, what concerns them the most. We tell them that we'll discuss multiple things, but what do they think is the most important to focus on? Saying this lays the groundwork for a few things to be acknowledged or to happen. Firstly, a tutoring session is a conversation. Your job is not to hand down all the right answers. It's not like a courtroom judge handing down a decision. Both you and the writer will be talking together. This is the writer's paper, so they should have input as to what happens. It's also a way to start conversation. If the student is worried about developing ideas, is that for the paper as a whole or just certain parts? If they say grammar, well, is that really all aspects of grammar or just run-on sentences? Asking for clarification again puts the writer in the driver's seat and engaged in a conversation before you as the tutor have even read the paper. It's also a place to empathize. You can say, yeah, I always have to double-check my organization too. It's also an opportunity to remind writers that a writing center is not a proofreading surface. You can educate others about your center's mission, values, etc. If expectations align, there's less chance of some disappointment. Lastly, it's an opportunity to remind writers that the writing process is just that, a process, and there's lots of things they should consider for improvement. As you read through a writer's paper, you'll want to keep the writer's prioritized concern in mind. And if you agree with the writer's assessment, great, that might help you determine how you'll approach the session. And if you disagree, this is also an opportunity to remind the writer that the session is a give and take conversation and that you are actively listening to them. So you might say, yep, we'll talk about your main concern of documentation, but before we do that, I'd also like to talk about X. And then you focus on what will best help this student grow as a writer. Remember Stephen North? Our job as tutors is to make better writers, not better papers. Depending on how your center is set up, you may have a limit as to how long a session can be. If that's the case, what do? You may have 5 things that you want to talk about, so ask yourself what are the most important for the writer to know. Deal with those first in case you run out of time. What's most important to help them grow as a writer? We ultimately believe that higher order concerns take priority. The writer may be worried about grammar, and grammar may be something they struggle with, but an academic paper free of all grammar errors can still get a poor grade if the writer has not fulfilled the assignment's basics. Or maybe the organization is off, or there are logic gaps, or points are underdeveloped. These are all higher order concerns, and a paper free of all grammar errors won't clear these other issues up. Start with the most important things first, and remember that you don't need to talk about issues in the same order that you spotted them in the paper. Also, this distinction between higher order concerns and lower order ones isn't always foolproof. Sometimes a lower order concern can be a higher order one for that particular writer. If they're forgetting to document their work and are plagiarizing, that automatically becomes a higher order concern. Or if they think that they are paraphrasing correctly and they really aren't, that's a high priority. If a piece of writing is full of so many surface and grammar errors that they prevent you as a reader from understanding what the writer is saying, that's also a higher order issue. Lastly, if a paper is due in an hour and the writer won't have time to revise, you may only be able to help with grammar. When you do need to talk about grammar in a session, you should still prioritize. When you discuss grammar in a session, you're doing that not because you're a proofreader or editor and pointing out every little mistake, but because the writer tends to keep making particular types of errors. When you do see that pattern, you'll want to point out the rule, talk about the writer's understanding of that rule, and try to give them a fuller understanding of that issue. You'll probably point out an example and ask if they can correct it based on your explanation. You'll then probably point to another section of the writer's text with that same error and see if the writer can find the error on their own and then correct it. Beyond thinking about these issues in terms of patterns, you should know that research has been done and surveys show that some grammar errors are more problematic than others. The most serious grammar errors involve the following. Sentence boundary issues can include run-ons, which have nothing to do with length, involving 2 separate thoughts, or independent clauses, being improperly joined. The period is missing. For example, the dog keeps barking, the dog is driving me crazy. A comma splice is a type of run-on. You again have 2 independent clauses being joined by just a comma rather than a comma and a coordinating conjunction or a period. For example, the dog keeps barking, the dog is driving me crazy. Fragments are incomplete thoughts. The statement is missing a subject or a verb, or it has both a subject and verb, but the thought is incomplete because a subordinate conjunction, like if or because, has been used. For example, John a good student. When it comes to verbs, you'll want to think about a few things. Consider issues of subject-verb agreement. For example, the girl are wearing a red dress. The main characters of the novel One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is. And then there are issues involving verb tense shifts. For example, the sentence starts out in present tense, but then switches into past tense. He wants to come with us, but he had to do homework. With comma issues, there are lots of rules. These rules can involve serial lists, joining 2 complete thoughts with a coordinating conjunction, adding and modifying information and introductory phrases, making complex sentences with dependent and independent clauses, and so on. And some comma usage is stylistic in nature. Check out our handouts at spsu.edu/writing center to learn more about specific comma issues that you might encounter in tutoring sessions. Lack of clarity and exactness can involve a few major things. Pronoun antecedent issues involve a disagreement between a noun and its related pronoun. For example, the students at the all-girls school refuse to wear her dresses. Misplaced modifiers or dangling modifiers attach a descriptive phrase to the wrong thing in the sentence. In this example, After dashing through the rain, my hair was a mess. Who dashed through the rain? Not an inanimate object like hair. Issues of ambiguity could include the example, the mother found her lost daughter and she was happy. Who is happy here, the mother or the daughter? Word choice issues sometimes include frequently misused words, irregular verbs, I saw or seen, or people just trying to impress their readers with a big vocabulary that they haven't quite mastered. We've been focusing on concerns here, but you'll also want to talk about what's working well in a text, but be sincere in your praise. Also, if you try to rush through everything you see wrong in the paper, you'll overwhelm the writer. Most people can focus on 2 to 3 things at a time, so be strategic. Next, be sure to watch your time. When you think about building rapport, asking the writer about the assignment and paper, having time to read the paper, wrapping up the session, etc., a 60-minute session done face-to-face will probably let you get to 2 to 3 higher-order concerns. A 30-minute session may let you get to just 1. Also, some lower-order concerns can be easily dealt with through handouts your center may have. Maybe the student has a question about formatting an APA title page. You can deal with that by giving them the handout. Here are some additional questions to ask yourself regarding prioritizing higher and lower order concerns. How does the conversation change if the writing isn't a typical or traditional paper? What are higher order concerns and what are lower order concerns if the text in question is a resume, a letter to the editor, a short story, a lab report? What happens if the writer disagrees with what you think the highest priority is? How can you convince them otherwise? How can you work with them? Thanks for watching this video on tutoring writing, and good luck as you move forward. Remember that you can find more information about our services at svsu.edu/writing-center or at communitywriting-center.com. Or you can email us directly at ccw@svsu.edu.